Play some hockey.
Energetic, passionate, and savvy. Gouche Live. Brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Gouche.
You are watching Gouche Live right here at the bottom line, 22 Front Street, a slap shot away from the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I have got an amazing show. All thank you to our producer, Jordan Kyrou, and of course, a very, very special guest will be making an announcement. This man is coming in and joining the locker room. Can you believe it? We've got Gord Kirk in the studio. He's live in audience. We'll be bringing it up just after we talk to the expert on the NHL, my producer, Jordan Kyrou.
Hey, Gouche.
How you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's nice to be down here on a early Wednesday afternoon.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's lunch with Gouche and friends, and look
Yeah.
at the friends we got. Terry Rivard has got us a very extra special guest. I know you're a little bit too young to know who this gentleman is, but I'll tell you what, he is regarded as one of the top sports lawyers of all time in Canada. That's exciting, and his stories are going to be absolutely rock on. He's probably got more stories than I do.
I mean, I'd hope so because I'm starting to hear repeats now. We're getting to that point in the relationship.
Well, that's all right. I'll start making stuff up then. Hey, listen, let's get right into it. Of course, Gord's going to come up in a little bit. We're going to be talking about a new show that he's putting together here at the locker room. And of course, you'll be the producer. But before we do that, we got to talk a little bit about the NHL. And the NHL, a lot of things have gone on. I know this is one of your favorite players, Jordan Kyrou.
I don't know if I'd say one of my favorite players, but I do like him. He just recently signed 8 years, $8.25 million. The same deal Robert Thomas got earlier this offseason as well. So the Blues have their future locked up, and those two, I think, are going to be top talent at the NHL at the very near future.
Well, I'll tell you what, his stats are good, right? Career highs of 27 goals, 48 assists for 75 points, a point a game. He's worth that kind of money.
Yep, for
And
sure.
the only reason why I said he's one of your favorite players, he does have your first name, doesn't he?
I guess.
Now, of course, the St. Louis Blues didn't go as deep as they wanted to, of course. What was the reasoning for that? They've got a heck of a roster.
Yeah, and they had some up and down goaltender play, and I think overall, I just think Colorado was just the better team when things got to the end there. So for St. Louis, he's still have a really good roster going into this season. I think he still have a really good chance to make a deep run. No more Vilhuso, though. It's going to be all on Jordan Bennington to back this team too.
He's done it before.
He's done it before. I don't see why he can't do it again. And I mean, and it's not just this year. I think their window is going to be open for a few years here because they have Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Colton Parayko, Torrey Krug, Justin Falk, Braden Shen, and Nick Leddy signed for at least the next 4 years. Some of them 6 years, and I think 2 of them are still 8 years. So.
But Jordan, you mentioned Torrey Krug. He's had some shoulder injuries. Do you know anything about that at all?
I think you're talking about Tarasenko.
No, I'm talking about Krug also.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I met his brother. I apologize for throwing that out at you. We're going to talk about Tarasenko in a second.
Yeah.
Sorry if you didn't know it. I spoke to his brother probably sometime early spring last year because I was supposed to do an event with his brother, and he was mentioning that Torrey did have a shoulder injury, and he was out a little bit during the regular season.
I do know he's missed some time. But it's never really been anything super significant, so I wouldn't be too worried there because, I mean, you still have Justin Falk. You still have Nick Leddy. It's a good all-around D-core that's deep. It's just they're not as strong as they were with Pietrangelo, obviously, but still pretty solid.
Well, and, of course, Colorado making a goalie change, of course.
Yep.
Could that be the Achilles tendon for the St. Louis Blues to overtake the Colorado Avalanche?
I think it is.
All right, talk to me about Tarasenko and O'Reilly. Of course, they're free agents next season. Tarasenko wanted out. He's back in. He does have some injury. The guy's uber talented, over the top talented. Do you think that this is going to be decided by the way this team comes through the playoffs this year? Is that going to be the decision making for Tarasenko, or do you think he's going to go and test the market?
I think I think the team has the power here. I mean, if you look at the salary cap situation, they do have a few other contracts coming at ending next season, but they're only going to be able to keep one of them. And if I'm the St. Louis Blues right now, it's probably going to be Ryan O'Reilly. You run there's less risk of the injuries with Tarasenko that he has, and I think there's more Vladimir Tarasenko's. Then there's Ryan O'Reilly's in this league.
Yeah.
I think if you get a two-way center that can provide offense, you lock him up, you hold on to him for as long as you can, and do whatever it takes to keep him.
But there's a great comment coming in from Dave Stubbs. Tarasenko is one of the best releases in the NHL, but that obviously is when he's healthy, and that's a big question mark. Anytime you have that much talent and you've already damaged goods, pretty tough to look at a long-term deal. So I think he will probably end up in the free agency market. Hello to Stephen Ellis from the Hockey News. Thank you for joining us and listening in and getting pointers from us. We're giving you some pointers, buddy. And always pleasure to have Brady Leopold on. I look forward to talking to you. Doing great work out there, bud, with Puck Support.
He's in studio tomorrow, actually.
I heard that.
Yep.
Fantastic.
For the Sheriff, yep.
Oh, so you won't come on my show, Braids, but you'll go on my competition. It's not competition. It's all called The Locker Room. Really excited. And I'm going to come down to the show. I'm going to make a point to be down to the show, Brady, and that's when we can talk about a couple of really cool things that I've got going on. Let's talk about something that was missed. A lot of people didn't talk about this, right?
Yeah.
August 30th, the Stars owner, Jim Neal, went on a Cam and Strick podcast. What did they talk about?
So he was asked about kind of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin and kind of where they are with the team right now. And Jim Neal had this to say: they are taking up a quarter of the cap and not producing enough.
Oh,
and I mean, if you look at it, Jamie Benn signed at $9.5 million for the next 3 years, and Tyler Seguin signed at $9.85 million for the next 5 years. And both those guys were under 50 points last season. Both have been declining for a few years now. For the Dallas Stars, it kind of puts them in a bit of a situation because they are taking up $18 million in cap space. But
I'll tell you what's going to be exciting in the future when we have our guest that's coming up right after you, Gord Kirk. I can get into some of these discussions about how does that all work. Guy gets this incredibly big contract and doesn't produce. Yeah. And yet they don't take any of the responsibility to it. Kind of for an owner, it's pretty difficult. Hey, we see Wayne Calley, the owner of the Bottom Line. Always a pleasure to see you, buddy. Don't forget, come on down. Chicken wing special today? Yes, it is.
But just more context with that clip. He did go on to say that Tyler Seguin hasn't been 100% in a few years now, and we've seen that I think he only played 3 games last season. And before that, has just never been able to finally get that groove. And then Jamie Benn, he said he still does a lot, even though when he's not producing. And if they were to say that Jamie Benn was on the trade market, there's probably 31 other teams that are going to be on the phone call.
32. They probably would want to re-sign him anyways. Hey, listen, let's talk a little bit about Dave Stubbs coming on and saying he's not wrong. He signed those guys when they were elite, but that's part of this business. And when I do get a chance to talk to Gord on his show, I really want to find out about how owners and management look at a player and develop a number. Do they base it on all the other players that are out there and kind of like buying a home? If the home has 5 bedrooms and he's got 50 goals, or are there other intangibles that we can talk about as we go forward here? Hey, listen, I know that we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Dallas Stars. Joe Pavelski is also a free agent after the season. He has fared better than the other two, and he's much older. Like he's an old wily veteran.
He's I think he's like 2 or 3 years older than both of them.
Point a game, plus 11. Yep. You can't ask for anything more. 27 goals. Joe Pavelski, and really good in the playoffs also.
Yeah, and I think that's the guy they're going to try to keep. But even he's at a $5.5 million cap, and I mean I think he's 36, 37, 38 around there. So it'd be interesting to see how much they do end up signing him for, which probably be sub 5,000, which is what he's getting paid now. But some other news in Dallas: Jason Robertson is still unsigned.
That's unbelievable.
As an RFA, the guy had 40 goals last season.
I'd be signing him quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be putting in offer sheets. I mean, Kotkaniemi offer sheet last year, and I think he's half the player Robertson is.
Hey, what about the Toronto Maple Leafs going on and getting the brother line?
They can afford it.
Listen, Dave Stubbs, why don't we get you on the show? He's always got incredible knowledge on the game. Of course, hard to give up on players that are the face of the franchise. So Jamie Benn, of course, and Tyler Seguin. Pretty tough it's almost like a slap in the face to ownership when they have to be making statements like that. Doesn't really look good to your fan base, but certainly they're not doing what they brought them in to do. So I guess they have the right to question that. The one really good thing I think about the Dallas Stars is their goaltending. Spectacular young kid.
Yeah, and they did manage to re-sign him earlier in the offseason, which, I mean, that was those are the two things that Dallas needed to do: sign Jason Robertson and sign Jake Ottinger. They signed Ottinger to 3 years, $4 million. I think that's a perfect bridge deal for him to really prove that
He is the real deal.
what we saw in the playoffs,
Yeah.
he can put up for multiple seasons at a time. So I'm excited to see how he fares during that contract. But it's going to come down to Jason Robertson. He is the future of this team. And the fact that he's still unsigned with rookie camp starting today, actually, yeah, it's just sad to see.
Hey, you're watching Gouche Live right here at the bottom line, of course, 22 Front Street. I'm with my producer, Jordan Kyrou. It's hockey time. How exciting is it? The NHL is just a stone throw or around the corner coming up. You mentioned it starts, the NHL camps start their preseason September 24th.
Yep.
And we'll be able to watch it here because we're going to be doing an Oktoberfest party right here live. And we'll be watching both games. I think there are two Leaf games that day.
I have a couple of questions about how that's being worked out, because are they allowing fans in for both games? Are they televising both games? Are they are they the same squad for both games?
Let's do some research.
Yeah,
We'll find that out.
I tried to do it a little bit last night. Couldn't find a ton.
We'll make a call. We know some people.
All right.
All right. Season starts October 7th. Are you excited about it?
I mean, actually, I will say this. I'm excited for hockey to start, but I think it's been the worst opening that we've had in NHL history.
Okay, we'll talk
You
about
have the San Jose Sharks against the Nashville Predators October 7th and October 8th, and that's it.
What?
Yeah.
When's the next games?
So 7th and 8th are Wednesday and a Thursday, I believe,
All right.
and then the Friday.
But you know, you and I'll be.
But then the Friday, there's only two games. You have
We'll be tuned in on them.
you have the Rangers and the Lightning, which would be a good game.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm drawing a blank on the other one.
Hey, listen, obviously, before I bring up Gord, I want to ask you the question. We'll start our division previews on Friday.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the Pacific Division right off the bat. But I want to put you on a little bit of a spot right now.
All right.
Okay. MVP this year. You can change it later on. But right now, if you had to pick who you think is going to be the Hart Trophy winner, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Connor McDavid.
There we are. We're agreeing with that. Final question for you. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup? We know it's probably going to change 5 times.
Carolina. I've been saying that for a little bit now.
Yeah. Is Brent Burns a factor?
I don't know if it's Brent Burns specifically, but just the collection of the moves Carolina did. I mean, bringing Max Pacioretty. You have another year of Freddie Anderson. You have another year of Aho and Svechnikov getting a little bit older. I just think that they're going to be better than a lot of people expect. I think they're probably going to win the Eastern Conference in the regular season and the playoffs. I know a lot of people are expecting the Rangers to do well. I don't think the Rangers are close to Carolina right now. All
right. Well, we'll be looking back on this, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Jordan Kyrou, the producer of The Locker Room and, of course, the Gouche Live. Very well done. Hey, listen, I am so excited. I'm actually nervous. I know I had a lot of great guests, but this one, I'll tell you what, Gord Kirk, regarded as one of the top sports lawyers here in Canada. He has stories that are beyond normal, and I wish I could have as many stories as he could, but I don't. He's a graduate of Osgoode Hall Law School, a Bachelor of Laws, a Master of Law degrees. I could go on forever. He's been the legal counsel for the Toronto Blue Jays since 1976. He prepared the original documents. We will have him on his own show talk about that, but he has built a foundation that is absolutely, truly incredible. We're going to be talking with Gord. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Gord Kirk.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to be on your show.
I'm honored that you're on my show, number one, and I'm even more honored that Terry Rivard has got you coming in and being a part of our Locker Room casting.
Terry Rivard is very persuasive.
Yeah. It's the money, isn't it?
What's the gun? It's the gun more than anything.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about your career. It's an illustrious career. And listen, we've only got a half an hour. We could be here for 3 hours just talking about all the things that you've done. But one of the things that I want to obviously announce to the world right now is you are looking at 2 published authors. You published a book.
Yes.
You're an author.
I guess that makes me an author.
Now,
yeah.
mine was with crayons and pictures and stuff like that. With Keith Primo, we did Concussed, which talked about, obviously, the word says it all. But being a published author, obviously, is a true testament of what you've done. But I think some of your higher accolades, you don't remember. I was on Off the Record with you with Michael Landsberg because you were one of the most decorated people on that show. You were on all the time. Every time I came in, you were there.
Well, I always enjoyed going on with Michael, and I'm sure it made it extra special that you were on as well. So
You didn't remember, but that's okay.
no, I remember being a handsome guy, but I didn't know
Yeah.
the name
When did he show up?
at the time.
Well,
But-
you're not even talking about me. You're talking about Michael.
Oh, Michael, yeah. No, Michael's one of my favorite people in the world, and I hope we can get him to come on and
Yes.
say hello to everybody.
Yeah.
Just knows the sports area intricately, and and is a super guy. Does a lot of work in the charity area, and it'd be terrific to see him.
A lot with mental health, of course,
Yes.
which is really important. So we will get Michael Landsberg on, of course, your show, and maybe we can steal him for a Gouche Live episode also. But when you talked about the good-looking dude, I honestly, I know it wasn't me. I don't even think it was Michael Landsberg. It was that guy that you were on Sportsnet Fan 590, Bob McCowan.
As
That
a
was a
good-looking
good-looking
guy,
dude.
you mean?
Well, he's pretty smart.
Yeah, he was pretty smart. He had me on the show. But
No, but he was, and when I watch you were on the show with him a lot, and I'll tell you what, you guys just had that persona, that personality that just blended really well. And that's half of this, right? If you get chemistry and things really work out.
absolutely. No, Bob is one of my favorite people. He's very intelligent. He's very tough. He doesn't pull any punches, and it was always a great pleasure to be on the show with him. And we were on frequently together, and always a big honor.
Well, what I really liked about him, and I say this in a very positive way, that arrogance, that ego that just oozed out of him, and not in a negative way. He was just very confident, knew his stuff. And I always said, obviously playing pro hockey over in Europe, you have to have a little bit of an ego. You got to be, if you're not going to step up and be in front of the camera, you're going to be left behind on the camera.
Absolutely.
And without that confidence, you just can't do it.
No, and he had it in spades, and was always, you knew who was master of the show with Bob, because he left no doubt.
Well, you turn your mic off if you didn't like what you were saying.
Well, that's right. He had the techies turn off the mic, so I was very aware of that. But it was always a pleasure to go on with him, and whether you argued with him, disagreed with him, whatever, you knew it was going to be a good happening.
Well, you've had an incredible career, not only as a sports lawyer, but an entertainment lawyer. You've seen them all. You've been with the greats. And some of the guys that very diverse. Like your clientele is one of those clienteles that you could just sit here and one day, hopefully we can have them all here for a roundtable. But think about Bret Hart, Donovan Bailey, your good friend and a good friend of mine through Brian Green, Keith Pelly. I just love his whole persona. And of course, Eric Lindros was one of your clients.
Yes. Great hockey player, obviously. And a very interesting time to work with Eric. And I thought very highly of him. I had great respect for him. And I think he got a bit of a raw deal by the media when he was drafted by Quebec, and he refused to sign, and the press portrayed it that he was anti-Quebec, which was, I talked to him, and it was the farthest thing from the truth. He knew that both my kids, Ryan and Joanna, were involved in the French immersion program, and he said to me one day, "That's terrific that they have the fortitude and the get up and go to take French immersion." And he was plotting it. It was good. And so I knew it had nothing to do with being anti-French or anything like that, why he decided he didn't want to report to Quebec.
really a strange time, and I know you'll get deeper into that as we go through having you on our platform. One of the things that I want to read this off. When Hart was suggested as a client, you said, I sat down to get this over with and say I didn't want to represent him, but he totally won me over. He was a very warm individual, and he showed me poetry that he wrote. Bret Hart.
One of the most, I guess I would say, diverse people I've ever met in my life, known as sort of a bulk, a tough guy, a good wrestler, there for Vince McMahon and the WWF and all that stuff. But as a person, he was out of this world. I've talked to him as recently as last week, so we've stayed in touch. And he and his lovely wife Stephanie,
Yeah.
and it was great to represent him. Probably the worst thing that happened while I was representing him was I became convinced. I convinced myself, for no good reason apparently, that he was faking one of his so-called moves. I think it was called the sharpshooter hold, and I said it doesn't look so tough to me. And I, for years, worked on a begged, pleaded that he would put me in the sharpshooter hold, and I could feel whether it was painful or not.
And
He, as an act of mercy, as a goodwill man, did not put it on me for several years. Finally, one day, I guess I'd spoken once too much, and he said, "Let me just let you have a feel of it." He said, "Lie down. Do you want me to pick you up and throw you to the ground to start with, or will you lie down peacefully and let me apply the hold?" I said, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that over the head slam to the ground thing. Let me lie down peacefully, and you can do what you will." So his wife was there to take a picture, and I laid down on the ground, and Bret applied the sharpshooter hold to me. Now, I know he probably didn't give it all the pressure you could have and all the anxiety and all the things that go with it, but he put it on me. I don't recall in my entire life being more in pain than I was when he put the sharpshooter on me, and I couldn't hide it. I would like to, while pictures were being taken, I wanted to not look like I was in any pain. I wanted to look like a tough guy.
yeah,
That was the last thing in the world I really looked like. I looked like a guy in pain
yeah, pretzel.
and a pretzel.
Did he forget that you were a lawyer?
He did, apparently, or he thought I couldn't afford to sue him. So he allowed me to endure the pain of the sharpshooter, and then he released it, and he was pretty happy that he had a bunch of pictures he could take away from it.
Jesus.
But man, it was real.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've aged yourself, of course, because you mentioned the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF.
Yes,
It's now called
as
the
it then
WWE.
was. Yes.
Do you, like, I don't understand. The WWF obviously was the World Wildlife Federation.
Yes.
And I guess there changed. What, do you remember that?
No,
whole
I
story?
remember when it changed. I don't remember what Vince McMahon was thinking or why they went to another name, but they did, and it could have been as an respect for the World Wildlife Group. So they didn't explain to me why the change of the name.
Well, it just has, when somebody does say the WWF, they know the age factor, because
Yes.
I'm in that same spot.
right.
Listen, a great comment coming in here from David Stubbs, one of our big supporters of the show. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there
ever will be. Now, we should make that clear. That
You're talking about me or you?
Neither. That's a pity. It would apply to either of us, I believe, but he's talking about Bret Hart.
I thought he was talking about. Thanks, Stubbsy. All right, listen, you've had other clients, of course, the Toronto Raptors, Toronto Argos, of course, the Indianapolis Colts. And of course, the Ontario Hockey League. I've already mentioned the World Wrestling Federation. I know when your show is coming up, you're going to be able to talk about some of the creations, obviously with the Toronto Maple Leafs or Toronto Blue Jays, and of course the naming of. You'll bring us up to speed to that. But out of all these organizations, and which one are you most proud of? I know it's tough when you say who's your best player or who's the guy you want to, but there's got to be some. There's this time in your life. I can say who my best player was that I ever played with, Mark McKay, hands down. And I know that would maybe upset a few people, but it's fact. I can say that. Is there any one of these organizations you said I had a lot of fun?
Well, I think probably the memory that sticks the longest and most impactful is the history with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Just a remarkable history. And I think a large part of that has to do with remarkable people. For example, on the executive, Paul Beeston, who's still with the
Yeah.
Blue Jays and is just an incredible person who, once again, I misjudged, just like Bret Hart, but in a different way, I misjudged Paul.
What was his move?
Paul came in. He didn't
You know,
have
one
a
okay.
sharpshooter or any other named move. But when he first came into my office, he was wearing no socks. He had a very strange laugh, and he was quite loud and a very boisterous laugh, etc. And so I thought, I don't know if this guy's going to make it as a sports executive. Well, as it turns out, as all your listeners and viewers know, he probably is one of the best executives, not just in Canada, but anywhere
Yeah.
of all time. He turned out to be spectacular and added so much to the Blue Jay aura and their history, and still remains a good friend. And so he was terrific to work with, but fooled me in a tremendous way. The other one that I should mention, who was with the Blue Jays, is no longer, but it was Pat Gillick,
Oh yeah.
Mr. Baseball in my mind.
Yes, he is.
He just knows baseball better than anybody alive today,
Yeah.
I would say. And I don't think I get too much disagreement. But Pat is terrific. I've talked to him as recently as this week. And he's now working with the Philadelphia team. But Pat was really so important in the assessment of players,
Right.
and the hiring of
And that's
players.
how good that you need that, right, to build an organization.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you a question about that. Toronto seems to no Boykes, David Stubbs. It's not Darren Boyko. You can tell him he's a good hockey player, but not quite as good as Mark McKay. Talk to me about, does Toronto get a bad rap? I know we've got the Raptors, but there are a lot of people that have always shunned. We've only, we've got the only baseball team. We've got the only basketball team. And people say that there's a lot of Americans that don't even know there's a 49th parallel because everything goes down below.
Yeah.
And there's always been this chatter between the leagues that players don't want to go to Toronto because of the tax and the low value of the dollar. We know that everybody gets paid in American dollars anyway, so that
Yes.
throw it out. And there's some states that have tax just as high as ours. Do we get a bad rap?
Yes. I think it's much, much better now that, the Raptors and Blue Jays in particular, and the Leafs, have done as well as they have historically. So I think the rap is going away, thank heavens.
Yeah. So you touched upon it, and I have to ask you the question. The Toronto Maple Leafs, of course, right around the corner here at the bottom line, we have the picture of the 1967 Stanley Cup winners, the last Stanley Cup winners. And one of my very good friends is Ron Ellis, whom you know
Yes,
very
I know.
well also.
Yes.
Just a mentor to me, a lovely, lovely man. In our lifetime, because we're close to about the same age, maybe a decade
You're
apart.
43?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and 2 decades.
I didn't know. That's
and
right.
exactly 2 decades.
Yeah.
43 and 2 decades. Will the Toronto Maple Leafs win a Stanley Cup before you and I leave this earth?
Oh, I think they will. I think if only in our imagination. But no, I think they will. I mean, obviously, they have the money of any other team,
Right.
and they have the talent in the scouting area and the development area
Yeah.
that should produce a winner. I believe they will.
But Gord, I've heard that a lot of people say, well, the Toronto Maple Leafs so proud they got such a big opportunity with a budget, but they all have the same budget because there's a cap, of
Yes.
course. The New York Rangers, look at what they've done. Of course, it's Jordan O'Reilly's favorite team, and mine's the Winnipeg Jets, small market. We watch what's going on with Arizona. Obviously, teams don't have to go to the cap,
Right.
but a lot of these teams have gone to the cap and still haven't won a Stanley Cup. And so when I hear people say, well, we've got the budget to do it, well, every team has the budget. It's whether or not they can fulfill the proper contracts, bring in the
Absolutely.
right players.
Yes, I mean the talent scouting and development are the two key factors, obviously, because the league, I think, quite wisely took the money competition out of it to a large extent.
Yeah.
But you're right. The two key factors are the scouting and the development.
All right, Gord, before we talk about a little bit about your new show, I know there's going to be a little bit of suspense. We don't want to give them everything right now. But I did want to go through, obviously, some of the things. You did publish a book in 1997, Players' First Report on Sexual Abuse and Harassment. Are you shocked since 1997, what's gone on over the last couple of years with obviously things coming out in the National Hockey League, what's going on obviously in Hockey Canada?
Yeah, I mean it is shocking. I'm sure there's nobody who isn't trying to fight against it in the executive level and the management level, etc. And when I did the Players First report so long ago, it was at the urging and request of the three principal people in each of the leagues, David Branch and our friend in Quebec and our friend out west. And those people were so keen and anxious to produce a work that would help them with sexual abuse of players, following upon the Sheldon Kennedy event, which
Right.
got notoriety. And,
Right.
and I was blessed with the opportunity to meet and talk with Sheldon Kennedy. And that was a great experience. The only bad experience I had with the Players First report, other than learning some of the stuff I learned in writing the report, was at the end of the Sheldon Kennedy event, and he had walked across the nation from coast to coast.
Right.
And cycled somewhat
That's right.
when he was cheating like I do when I'm walking. But
Now we can use an e-bike.
that's right. But he made it to the West Coast, and I knew they were going to celebrate in British Columbia. So I flew to British Columbia to be with him. And then he did something I didn't think he was going to do. He jumped off a cliff in British Columbia into the Pacific Ocean. So I thought I supported Sheldon Kennedy.
You did it.
Emotionally. So I thought about doing it.
Okay.
And went to do it. And then somehow God stepped in and reminded me that I can't swim. So I somehow was able to withhold the impetus of my jump into the Pacific Ocean.
I think it was
And
Brett.
rather just cheered Sheldon.
I think it was Bret Hart in the background remembering that hold. Listen, we could go on forever, but I do want to talk a little bit about your show. But there's a question that just came up from David Stubbs. Thank you for joining us on this journey here. Do you think team management ownership use the media to harp on the taxes to make excuses for players not to come to Canada? That's in all leagues. That's for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's for the Toronto Raptors. It's for, obviously, the Toronto Blue Jays.
No, I don't think so. I guess what David's asking about is the other teams.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, sorry, I apologize.
The non
Are the other teams that are competing for those players saying, hey, listen, you sign in Toronto, your tax base is really crazy. And,
I don't think so.
and there's poutine.
I'm in poutine. I maybe being somewhat naive, but in negotiating contracts, obviously mostly for Canadian teams, but not always. I didn't encounter somebody saying, "Oh, but I've heard this or that." I mean, they may have heard it, but it wasn't that obvious, and I don't think it was a factor.
So, Gord, as we get into your show, I was reading about you, and there was I can't off the top of my head remember the gentleman that said this about, but when you represented not only the players or you went into a dispute with anybody, you never made it personal. You made it very. They want you to be at the negotiating table for the world wars because you just got everybody to calm down, and you convinced them with. I don't want to call it kindness because I don't think you can put kindness and lawyer together. But
Give me money in a kind way, please.
no, but that's a
please.
huge compliment. When do you recall? Do you remember who said that to you?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I read it and I will find that out when.
I don't think it'd be Berkey. It might be Brian.
No,
Burke.
Berkey wouldn't have thrown because he didn't throw compliments.
No, no.
Yeah. So the next time we're together, I'm gonna find out I'm gonna read it quote for quote because that's what really impressed me about you when I mentioned your demeanor is very calm, cool, and collected. And I'm wondering how the heck could you be one of the top sports lawyers? Because obviously you've gone into some
Maybe I
rooms with some
wasn't.
pretty.
Maybe I wasn't.
I read it in the newspaper. All right, let's talk about your show. Obviously, it's coming up this October. Terry Rivard, of course, has brought you to be a part of our locker room here at the Bottom Line, produced by obviously Jordan LaRoche. Talk to me about why you're coming back into this because you're very good at it. And Bob McCowan has his show, and I believe this could be a little bit of that competition between both of you guys.
I don't think I never feel like I'm competing with Bob. First of all, I don't think I have the ability to compete with Bob. I'm a tremendous fan of his and friend of his, and love what he does. If I can be close to Bob in ability and thinking and knowledge, I would be really happy. But I think the thing that got me interested is the approach by Terry Rivard, who's a wonderful producer and person of great experience in
Yep.
this area, and and I think the relationship with Bob too. What he does and having the chance to observe what he does has inspired me.
So, in your day, could you ever imagine? Here we are, we're watching our shows on this internet. I know your son's watching. We've got these little phones. We are connected at all times. And when you started out in this industry, you had to use an actual typewriter.
Yes.
Oh, or a pen to write. Now everything you can talk to.
That's right.
Hey Siri, do this. Hey Siri, do that. Please don't answer that right now. So, what's the essence of the show? I know that you're all sports. Like I could think of a name like Kirk Talks. Everybody will listen.
Yeah, I don't think we've developed a name yet.
It's coming though.
We're coming. Stay tuned, as they say. We'll get a name going, or maybe somebody wants to suggest a name. That's fine, and I'm sure you can write in or contact people and suggest a name. Keep it clean, please, and we'll consider all suggestions. But to me, it doesn't matter much what matters to me is bringing integrity to the approach to the sports field and how it's observed, and getting guests on that people want to watch and want to hear from.
Well, of course, you're a knowledge of history, but you're also a forward-thinking person. So I think that's what's going to be really intriguing about this, that, it's not just a hockey show. You're going to talk all sport because you've been involved in all the leagues.
Yes.
You've represented some of the greatest athletes that were non-hockey players. And, of course, we're here in Toronto. Everybody wants to talk Maple Leafs. No, that's not true. They want to talk about the Blue Jays. Oh, and those Raptors. So I'm really looking forward to it. And there's a really good name coming in from David Stubbs, Sharpshooter. That's not a bad name, I'll tell you what. Bret Hart, I don't know. It could be trademarked.
It could
could be
be. Maybe I
trademarked.
trademarked it for Brett. Yeah.
And of course, we can sue him if you didn't. All right, final moments then. Of course, I'm really honored that I have the opportunity to talk to you today. I look forward to being on a couple of your shows and kickstarting it, obviously, in October.
Absolutely.
I know you've got a Rolodex second to none. So I can only say that this man here not only knows his stuff as a sharpshooter, he'll be able to bring on entertaining guests from past and present that'll allow you to understand the sports market, not only here in Toronto, but all around the world. Gord, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to working with you again.
We are doing it.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there he is, the one and only Gord Kirk. I'll tell you what, I was kind of shaky there a little bit talking to, because he's a lawyer. And I'll tell you what, in my playing day, I know if I would have had him representing me, I would have been playing in the National Hockey League. Listen, Jordan LaRoche is joining me just to wrap up. How you doing, bud?
Not too bad.
Oh, what's that?
It was good.
Pretty knowledgeable dude.
Yeah.
Thank God we've got a lawyer in the house now. Is there a lawyer in the house? That'll help us out a lot, of course, with Gouche Live and all the things that we're doing. Obviously, representing the locker room, having this talent, and obviously the ability to bring the history of the games in, but also give us forward thinking.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting perspective, and I always kind of like getting the legal side of everything in the sports world. So I'm excited for the show to start, and I'm excited to produce it.
Now, he's asked me to maybe show people what the sharpshooter was. Do you remember that move?
No.
I think you have to lay down.
I have a very faint memory of Bret Hart. I don't know a ton about him, but
we're going to get him on the show.
All
right, Jordan, thank you. What's going on Friday? Sorry, bud. On Friday, we're talking a little bit of hockey.
Yep, we're starting our division preview, starting with Pacific Division.
Yep.
But yeah, aside from that, practice squad releases tomorrow.
Fantastic. How did you like what went on? Minnesota Vikings. I said it; they were going to win.
Yep.
How did you do on your first regular season games?
Not good. I won one bet all weekend. I think I went like 4 and 6 against the spread in our overall picks. It just wasn't a good week.
Just before I let you go, of course, School from David Stubbs. Obviously, the season started off with a bunch of injuries.
Yeah.
One of them, obviously, was the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. Is that a concern? Obviously, for Dallas, it's a big loss.
Yeah.
We've heard some other names. I think you mentioned A.J. Watt.
TJ Watt.
TJ Watt. I apologize.
Yeah, JJ Watt's also out with an injury.
How many Watts?
There's
How many
3.
Watts are there? What's that? Okay, I'm gonna let you, last question.
All right.
How good is my Jefferson? No, seriously.
Ridiculous. I mean, so I had a 50-point lead in my fantasy football matchup. Justin Jefferson scored 33 points. My win probability went from 80% to 2% after the Minnesota Vikings game alone. So, yeah, he's good. He's pretty good.
TJ Watt's a beast. All right, final comment here is this. Will Tom Brady end the year as a quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
That's not even your question.
Have you been listening to the stuff that's going on in the press with
it's
Giselle
it's not a question. Okay.
The wife's calling, baby.
I think Giselle might not be a Brady before the season's over. There's a better chance than Tom Brady not finishing this season.
Oh, my God. Jefferson is the best player in the league right now, and Cousins doesn't look too bad. But thank you.
All right.
Thank you for joining me. The producer of Gouche Live. Don't forget, Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be bringing you the NHL. It's back. Make sure you check it out at the bottom line. 22 Front Street, a stone throw away from where the Toronto Maple Leafs will start their season. Make sure you check it out. Thank you for joining us. Brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and, of course, the bottom line.
You've been listening to Gouche Live with your host, Kerry Goulet, better known as The Gouche, brought to you by the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated.